Here I am, banana, fuck you like an hurricane.
For decades, Sweden was a role model, a country where equality wasn't just a promise, but a reality. An open society where trust was so high that locks and cameras weren't needed. Where the government worked, the education system was a global example, and social cohesion seemed unbreakable. A country that had solved the biggest problems. But little by little, some things started to break. Today, there are entire neighborhoods where the police won't enter without backup. Daily shootings with automatic weapons. Planted bombs and grenade attacks. Criminal gangs, mostly made up of people from immigrant communities, are the ones setting the rules. Those who can, leave. And what's left are fragments of a country ruled by fear and silence. What began as a multicultural experiment ended up splitting society. A society that now lives between pride in what it once was and fear of what it has become. In this video, we'll explain why the most idealistic country in Europe no longer knows who it is. At the end of the 19th century, Sweden was one of the poorest countries in Northern Europe. Its economy depended on agriculture, but the cold climate and poor soil made farming hard and life difficult. Poverty was so extreme that between 1850 and 1930, 1.3 million Swedes emigrated to the United States, a third of the total population. But that same scarcity created a culture of hard work, discipline, and austerity. And when the industrial age arrived, Sweden knew how to make the most of it. Besides having well-prepared human capital, it had two other strategic advantages: natural resources and geographic location. In the north of the country, there were some of the highest quality iron ore deposits in the world. On top of that, Sweden had vast forests that provided plenty of wood and rivers that generated cheap hydroelectric power. And its access to the Baltic Sea and the North Sea made it a key trade hub for Northern Europe. With that foundation, during the first half of the 20th century, Sweden went from being a marginal agricultural economy to one of the most dynamic industrial powers on the continent. The country invested in technology, technical education, and heavy industries. Large family-run companies emerged, companies that are still Swedish icons today, like Volvo and Saab. But there was another decisive factor in its development. Sweden stayed neutral in both world wars. While the rest of Europe was destroyed,
Oh.
Sweden kept its infrastructure intact, its population alive, and its economy running. At the end of the Second World War, with its industry untouched, its natural resources rich, and a well-prepared population, Sweden became an export powerhouse. By 1975, Sweden had already become the fourth richest country in the world in terms of GDP per capita. But beyond its resources, the true foundation of Sweden's success was its culture. Up until the 1970s, Swedes shared the same ethnicity, language, religion, and a set of social norms that didn't need to be enforced. People followed the rules because everyone believed in them. It was a community of equals, where standing out too much could be frowned upon, but breaking the rules was even worse, because trust was the most valuable thing. And not just trust between people, but something much harder to find in the rest of the world: trust in institutions. Swedes trusted their police, their teachers, and even their politicians. They trusted that their taxes would be well spent, and that if they worked hard, the system would give them real opportunities. And for a long time, that was true, with a public education system that not only taught, it also created equality. It made sure that the son of a factory worker and the son of an engineer had the same chances to move up in society. And by doing so, it passed on the values that held up the Swedish model. That sense of community was reinforced outside the classroom too, through strong local, social, and work networks. All of that cultural structure was shaped into one powerful idea that defined Swedish identity for decades: the folkhemmet, or people's home. The vision of a society that worked like a big family where everyone looked out for each other. But like in any family, that solidarity also came with responsibilities: to contribute, to behave, and to respect the shared rules. The Swedish model worked because it was a social contract between people who shared values, rules, and a strong sense of belonging. But all of that began to change in the 1970s when Sweden decided it didn't just want to be an efficient country, it wanted to be a moral example. And that shift in mindset had a name: Olof Palme. A charismatic, idealistic politician who was deeply critical of American imperialism, South African apartheid, and the military dictatorships in Latin America. He served as Sweden's prime minister from 1969 to 1976, and again from 1982 to 1986, when he was assassinated in central Stockholm. In his view, Sweden should become the moral conscience of the West. It wasn't enough to remain neutral. Sweden had to take sides with the weak, the marginalized, and the persecuted around the world.
Yeah. Seen it.